Our annual Locked On Podcast mock draft super bonanzas in the books, and we are here to tell you who got it right, who got it wrong, and why James Yarko is the worst host on this week's NFL squad.
You are talking ball with the NFL squad, sponsored by Gametime. From the Chiefs to the Bills, Falcons to the 49ers, and everyone else around the NFL, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming weekend for hard-hitting football with our harder-hitting takes. Buckle up, it's the NFL squad, and we have a seat for you. No hurt feelings allowed. Squad up, you're part of the NFL squad.
And welcome back to NFL Squad. It's been a couple weeks since we've been here, but we are here with the Locked On Podcast mock draft super good time bonanza extravaganza. I'm Asian. I get to say all that kind of stuff. Sit back, grab your favorite drink, and join us as we get ready for another super wild mock draft going on in the network this year. We are, of course, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Even James Yarko, we're covering your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And as I give my buddy James Yarko of Locked On Bucks a lot of trash right now, you're not allowed to have your feelings hurt. I don't know if you heard Allie or Kylie. I'm not actually sure who the voice is, but yeah, you're not allowed to have your feelings hurt. But I know that James is a big time user of Gametime, so Gametime should really love all of James Yarko's personal endorsements because they're all very authentic, as are the 32 plus picks, gentlemen, that we have in this year's Locked On Podcast Network mock draft. Cody Rourke of Locked On Broncos, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints, Landon McCool of Locked On Boo, Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars, Spencer German of Locked On Browns, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, our resident usher person, I don't know, inside joke, Christopher Carter, Locked On Steelers, James Yarko of Locked On Bucks. Chris Carter is not here for the foolishness, guys, so hopefully somebody else can get this thing on track. But we are going to talk about all of our draft picks. We're going to talk about why they're good, why they're bad, and what other people should have done. And we're going to start with the first 10 picks here. The Tennessee Titans getting us started. Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. Closely thereafter, the Cleveland Browns go quarterback as well. Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders. New York Giants take Penn State edge Abdul Carter. Travis Hunter, the cornerback / receiver, a little bit of both out of Colorado. One of two players getting their numbers retired. Eat your heart out, Cordell Stewart. Going to the New England Patriots at number 4. Jacksonville Jaguars going Mason Graham, D-tackle out of Michigan. 5th overall, 6th overall, the Raiders go Ashton Genty, running back out of Boise State. 7th, the New York Jets go with Tet McMillan, Arizona wide receiver. Carolina Panthers at number 8 go Jalen Walker, the linebacker out of Georgia, followed by the New Orleans Saints going Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. And at number 10, Chicago Bears, Armand Membu, offensive tackle out of Missouri. I want to kick this thing over first and foremost to Spencer German, Locked On Browns. Shedeur Sanders at number 2. How close was that for you? Like, did you know that coming in that was going to be your first pick, or was there a battle there internally?
Yeah, I mean, there was a battle. I would say this, like, in the weeks since we had to submit our picks. So I blame Ross Jackson for this. He had me on a time crunch. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Like the owners' meetings, I think, were pretty eye-opening in terms of what the Browns are actually going to probably do. And because based on what Jimmy Haslam said, he made it sound like, you know, they were going to take their time and be patient with the quarterback issue, where I kind of approached this draft as, listen, I respect the hell out of Travis Hunter. Same thing with Abdul Carter. I think those are two fantastic players, maybe the only two players that are considered like blue chip players in this draft class. But the Browns need a quarterback. And I know Ross likes to throw out there that you're always in rebuild until you find a quarterback. And for the Browns, it's one of those things for me where it's like, listen, they haven't been able to get this position right. I think that Shedeur Sanders has a really good chance to be successful at the next level. You know, people get on him about his personality and the brashness. I actually think that's something that Cleveland Browns quarterback in particular needs to have, because you need somebody who can come here and like put the history with that jersey in the window of all the names of guys that have been quarterbacks, the 40 guys since 1999, like put that to bed and just like not let that be anything that's in their mind. So to me, I think that makes Shedeur Sanders a perfect fit for the Browns. And I also think he's a great fit for Kevin Stefanski's offense and everything that he wants to do. The Browns have talked all off season about prioritizing decision-making, and that's maybe the best thing that Shedeur Sanders brings to the table. So if they were to take Shedeur Sanders, I think it would make a ton of sense for them. I'd be on board with it. I know there's some Browns fans who feel differently. I ultimately think they'd probably take Travis Hunter. But for me, it made sense in this draft, especially with the information I had, to go with Shedeur Sanders at number 2.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I think
one way or the
right
other,
decision,
probably a
by the way.
Buffalo going to Cleveland, right?
Thank you.
So
Ross.
Ross Jackson confirmed that the New Orleans Saints are rebuilding, right? Because
Always. Yeah, they've been
don't have a
rebuilding since
quarterback.
Brees retired. Where you been?
How does Tyler Warren fit into that rebuild at number 9?
Yeah, it gives them somebody on their offense that defenses are actually afraid of. I think the Saints lack that kind of presence right now. Like, no disrespect to the guys that are on the roster, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. They just brought in Brandon Cooks. Like, that's their wide receiver trio at the moment. Alvin Kamara is still there, but Alvin Kamara hasn't played a full season since his rookie year. Alvin Kamara just had his career high in rushing yards last year and still has never had a 1,000-yard rushing season. I think I know, isn't that crazy? Like,
That's crazy.
Yeah, people never realize that. But I mean, he does all this other stuff, right? He's electric with the ball in his hands as a receiver and all this other stuff. So he's always kind of been able to do that. But I think what the Saints don't have right now is a guy that lines up that defenses are concerned about, that are worried about, that want to dedicate double coverage to, that want to shift their defense over to. And I think that Tyler Warren, who often gets like the Taysom Hill tag when talked about in New Orleans, I think is more of a Jimmy Graham type, not necessarily in terms of production or like peak or whatever. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We'll see. I don't want to put that kind of unfair expectation on the young man, but playing in line, playing out wide, playing in the slot, lining up out wide so much that he could potentially go to litigation over his next contract over it. Like, that's the kind of thing that Jimmy Graham did. And I think that that's what Tyler Warren would be able to add. I would have gone Tedoroa McMillan, if I'm being entirely honest, at 9, but he went at 7. So Tyler Warren was the next big, what I would call best playmaker available for New Orleans.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Speaking of litigation, Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers. I want to ask you this: you don't have a pick. Hey, Ross set it up, bro. Like, it's a softball pitch. I got to go there. We don't have a pick in this match, but I do want to ask you which pick in these top 10 needs to be prosecuted the most.
Why are we really playing with this theme? But we
can litigate that, counselor. That's what we do.
Okay. If I was to go at 1, I would say Shedeur Sanders at 2. I understand the need for quarterback. I understand that there's a fit there. Look, there is a chance that Shedeur Sanders comes in and just surprises us all. But I'm sorry, his arm strength, his height, his lack of great speed, his lack of great. I mean, his best feature is he has made good decisions. But when he's under pressure, I don't know how that's going to work. Like a lot of time he had great protection at Colorado, or like when protection did break down, he'd be able to spin out to his left. He will not get away with a lot of the things that he did in college. And I have Shedeur Sanders as a second-round quarterback in this draft. Like a lot of people keep asking me, should the Steelers take him at 21? Absolutely not. I don't think that he's a first-round pick in this draft class. Hey, I could be wrong, but just looking at this, I think outside of Cam Ward, this is a year for the backup quarterback draft. Or for a floor-raising quarterback rather than a ceiling-raising quarterback, and I think that would have been the thing there. If I'm the Browns, I would have probably drafted either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and gone that direction. But I understand the need for quarterback. Listen, I'm covering the Steelers every day. It's like, when is Aaron Rodgers signing? And that is the ultimate down bad sign. But we're
starting to hear that in New Orleans now too, baby.
That's the point. But here's the thing, Ross. Is even with that, every inch of what we're talking about, you and me, we talk about our teams. We're saying, doesn't matter how bad it gets. We're not over picking a quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah, when like they did in 2022.
Lenore Sellers next year.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I would have taken Shedeur Sanders at 9, but I don't think the Saints will. I don't think he's even in conversation for the team at 9 and everything like that.
I don't think he's the right kind of quarterback for what Kellen Moore wants to do.
Right. That's a Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, like that kind of.
That's not what's discussed in this quarterback conversation enough. Is the fit aspect of it, which I think matters with guys like Shedeur Sanders and frankly everyone beneath him. It's the fit with the team is going to matter where they go.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think Shedeur is probably one of the more fascinating, not just quarterbacks, but like just prospects in general that we've covered in the NFL. Yeah. Like for him to be like throughout the college season, it was, Shedeur might be picked. He might be quarterback 1. And then Cam Ward sort of creeped into the picture. And then it flipped at the combine to Cam Ward's easily the guy. and like the vast differences in like grades that people have. Because even for a while, like one of my biggest arguments for the Browns potentially taking Sanders was there were so many people mocking him with the Giants. And I was like, if the Giants can take him one pick later, why is everybody looking at the Browns like, oh no, they can't take a quarterback? It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So the fact that like people clearly believe he could go in the top 10, but there's a lot, but obviously the consensus is he's more so like late first round, second round grades is just kind of fascinating to me how that's kind of unfolded. And I definitely see the perspective of like, you know, he probably is more trending towards being late in the first round because somebody wants to get a 5th-year option on him or goes in the second round. But I also feel like quarterbacks are always overdrafted to a degree, right? You're always doing that because it's a premium position. And I think the fit, you guys talk about fit, I think the fit would be there for the Browns, whether they take him at 2 or they try to get him later. So
let's ride.
Yeah. Fortunately, somebody overdrafted a quarterback last year. Because of it, the Commanders got Jaden Daniels. Tony Wiggins, you went D tackle with the 5th overall pick, despite the fact that your new head coach that you're covering there in Jacksonville. I was going to say Duval the way that Liam Cohen did it, but I can't do it. Mason Graham.
You're not wide enough for that, David. I can do it.
Yeah. How close were you though to going Tet McMillan? Because I mean, Liam Cohen just came from Tampa, where he had this monster receiver, Mike Evans. I'm not saying Tet is going to be Mike Evans, but the natural transfers there. Was it Mason Graham for you at number 5 coming off the Patriots pick, or was there a battle there for you as well?
Personally, the battle for me was between Mason Graham and Armand Membo from Missouri. And the reason why is because even though they signed 4 guys on the offensive line and they have 2 that are projected to start, I just feel like Tony Baselli is an EVP. That is something you can never go overboard when you talk about a security force for your quarterback that you just paid $250 million to. So I just say, man, just go ahead and just go overboard and attack that right now, because the defensive line depth, the defensive tackle is so deep. They pick early in the second round. You do have to somehow play the game of maneuvering yourself to make sure that you don't freeze yourself out of need positions. And I did ask him last week, does he have to guard against trying to build his team for 2025 like fantasy football people would? Or do you take what's best for the organization with them being first time everything, EVP, GM, and head coach? This is a pick they hope not to be back at number 5. So what you got was an answer where he just basically said, you always have an eye for the future, but he was in Tampa and they played 4 guys last year. He said, we want these guys to play too. So with that being said, I went with the person that has a large body of work, who has a very high floor, and who's at a position where you can't have too many of them, and that's Mason Graham.
And a large body.
Body. Not as large as some people would want, but still, you know.
Big enough. Kevin Ostrager, Locked On Ravens. Let's finish this up, man. I know you're not used to covering top 10 picks, fortunately for you, but of these top 10 picks, which one is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite. I honestly like the Jalon Walker pick to Carolina. He's a guy that I really like coming out of Georgia, the versatility that he brings. And I think for Carolina, you know, we saw the second half resurgence from Bryce Young last season. And I think that Carolina, honestly, might be closer than some people think. I mean, I still think obviously, James, the AFC South or the NFC South belongs to the Buccaneers right now, but you know, still Carolina could be a team that surprises some people. I'm sorry, Ross, I had to do it.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, they're the NFC South champions.
But I was the Broncos in 2024.
I don't know. I feel like Carolina, Ross, it might be the Saints turn in the basement in Carolina.
You're saying stuff to me like I'm going to disagree with you.
I just want to put it out there that I agree with your agreement with me that the Saints are going to be bad.
The Saints' car broke down. So
the Saints were already in trouble with their car. Now they don't have a starting quarterback, and they might Spencer Rattler. They might draft somebody, whatever that might be. But like, yeah, well, no, that doesn't mean anything at all. I'm surprised people still bring up salary cap space when it comes to this team.
Well,
it's going to catch up to him eventually, right?
Right.
No, it's not.
Eventually. It's not. The Browns are doing the same thing.
As they sit right now with $27 million of salary cap still left this match.
You know what? Fine. I'll get bold. The Panthers are winning the NFC South. There we go.
Whoa, there you go.
Wow.
Ross wasn't giving me enough of a reaction. I had to get a reaction.
I'm surprised
that is our
top
10.
To Vegas.
We are We
I'm
are
surprised by it.
not even a third of the way through this whole thing, and we're already getting a little bit crazy here. Tony Wiggins, you all right? You with us?
I'm with y'all, man. Why
All right.
don't single me out, dog. I'm good.
It's a welfare.
You know I love you, brother. Picks
Why
11 through 20.
man. Go ahead, man.
Picks 11 through 20 coming up next on this week's NFL Squad.
Today's NFL Squad Show is brought to you by our friends over there at the Gametime app, and there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game where every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime, they make it easy and fast to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app, they actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. And look, last-minute deals, that's one of the more important pieces because sometimes life happens. You get done with work a little bit early. You say, you know what, I want to go to the game. Well, that's where you can save up to 60% off of buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and other events going on inside your area. Plus, the all-in pricing toggle means that there's no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Continuing now with this week's NFL Squad, reacting to this year's Locked On Podcast Network mock draft super special. I don't know why I keep wanting to add words to it. I just do. It's such an awesome experience. I think we've kind of gone a little bit chalk here in the first 10 picks, right? But let's go through picks 11 through 20. We'll get some reactions here and some opinions going on. The San Francisco 49ers get it started with Will Campbell, lineman out of LSU. The Dallas Cowboys go with wide receiver Matthew Golden out of Texas. Another Longhorn goes next. Jahdae Barron, defensive back, going to the Miami Dolphins. Jahad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker, headed to the Indianapolis Colts at 14. At 15, the Atlanta Falcons take quarterback. Just kidding. They take edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall. Arizona Cardinals at 16 go Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. The Bengals at 17 go with Walter Nolan, D tackle out of Ole Miss. The Seahawks at 18 go Tyler Booker, guard out of Alabama. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 19 go James Pierce Jr., edge rusher from Tennessee. The Denver Broncos at 20 break the hearts of all Commanders fans watching this and who don't know it already, and they go with running back Marion Hampton out of North Carolina. So my first question, gentlemen, is Cody Rourke, how dare you?
Sorry, my friend.
As you were reading off the, like the overall names, I felt like this portion of the draft turned out to be very boring in a sense. There's not like flash or pizzazz. We're not talking about like polarizing characters here. It really gets interesting when you talk about Marion Hampton and obviously Colston Loveland, a couple picks down there. But, for me, look, the Broncos, it's not like they go out there and they need to get a running back here. The idea here, they have 4 backs on the roster. It is Bashawn Payton. He's already got one joker in the deck with Evan Ingram at the tight end position. He wants to find that second joker there, potentially at the running back position. And when this list initially came out, when we had to put our picks together, Marion Hampton was the one guy. I was like, all right, hey, like this makes the most sense for the Broncos. Sean Payton could get a lot of usage out of him. I'm also creeping towards, like, if I could change it today, I would have taken Travion Henderson with pick number 20 out of Ohio State. I think probably a little bit more of a better fit here. There's been some talk that he may not even be there in round 2. Depends on what teams look at. So for me, Marion Hampton gives the Broncos a back who's got explosive capability, can help you as a receiver out of the backfield, good in pass protection as well. And you give Bo Nix another, weapon on the offensive side of the ball that's going to help this offense, hopefully on paper, take another step forward with the additions that they've made to try to compete for that AFC West division. So, that was where I was leaning with the pick. I did feel like this section was kind of boring, unless we want to talk about, Matthew Golden going to the Dallas Cowboys where, okay, hey, when's Dak Prescott going to, go on IR for another stint of the season? Like the most uninteresting story. Sorry, Landon. I'm sorry. I Cody threw your pick under the bus here. But
Cody, to at least give you some sort of consolation about that pick, though, as a matter of fact, he's a former Bronco, an offensive lineman, longtime NFL offensive lineman that I cover, who also did some scouting. Just randomly about 2 months ago said, all of those running back star teams that want Genty, I like him, But if you don't get him and end up with Omarion Hampton, you won't be mad. So so you know that's the way some people feel about him.
Highly drafted.
I feel like
Carolina
Gen Z,
running backs
Hampton
have always worked for the Denver Broncos.
Hey. How's that going for you, Landon? We'll see. 3 point something yards per carry this upcoming season.
Man, why am I taking fire here?
I mean, Landon's just getting it.
It's just
Landon, let's go to you. Let's go Matthew Golden. I mean, why Matthew Golden at number 12 for the Cowboys?
I feel like this is like hitting a double, and I'm acting like we're struck out. Like this, honestly, Golden certainly isn't like my first choice at this pick, but I think it's a solid pick at 12. Look, I think boring. What's going on here is that this draft, as I'm sure all of us have discussed on our show, it's just not very heavy at the top, right? There's just aren't a lot of superstars, there aren't a lot of blue chips. But I would say from this area of right around where we're picking 11, frankly, all the way through the back of the second half of the second round, there's a huge plateau of players that are probably all starters that might have like one wart, right? Or one imperfection where they're not exactly maybe going to come into the league and threaten to be a top 10 player at their position right away, right? So I think for the Cowboys, they have a list of spots that they need to get at. The one area where you feel like they're probably not going to be able to hit their need later is a secondary passing weapon. If you wait until the second round, you probably could get a Higgins or a Knoll, but none of that stuff is guaranteed. And the other area that you need is probably running back, and you definitely can get a running back a little bit later. So I think when Marcus and I have been doing this on the show, the sequencing really works out much nicer when you try to get your wide receiver first, and then it kind of all falls into place for you a lot, just with the Cowboys' needs and where the depth of the draft is. So to me, it wasn't exactly I love this pick. But I'm certainly not upset about picking up Golden because I do think he's going to provide exactly a lot of what you don't get out of CeeDee Lamb in the passing attack.
Landon 205 Dak's going to have that Lamar athleticism on display this upcoming season, man.
Do you think, Landon, do you think the kind of production that you're talking about opposite CD is what Jordan Addison does in Minnesota? Something like that?
I think that's what they're looking for. Yeah. That's the kind of thing where, one of the things that Addison does so well for Minnesota is even when he's not getting the ball, he's providing, by just creating space against the defense. And that's, really one of the issues the Cowboys had last year is they had, weapons on that offense, but they didn't have a ton of speed. So it felt like at times that they were operating inside of a box. So, I do believe he did run the 4.29. I kind of wish Golden had run like a 4.3 because then all these conversations wouldn't be about, man, Golden doesn't look like he runs a 4.29. All right. He looks like a guy who runs 4.3. He still has speed. And I still think he's a guy that if you deploy out there, he can, stretch the defense vertically and then provide opportunities underneath for guys like CD and Ferguson.
All right. Before we get to the best and worst picks in this group, though, we have to let James Yarko finally join in on the conversation. Thanks for showing up, buddy. James Pierce Jr. at 19 to the Bucs. How does he fit into Todd Bowles' defense?
Okay, so I wanted Jahad Campbell. That was the dream for me, was for Campbell to slip there, line him up next to Levante for a year. Then as Levante rides off into the sunset, you have a locked and loaded linebacker for the next 10 years in Tampa. That didn't work out. And really the only other guys in consideration here were Malachi Starks and then Donovan Ezeraku. So taking a look at Pierce, this dude was PFF's 27th ranked edge rusher in 2024, 12th in 2023. And I didn't think early in this process that he would slide to the Bucs, but now everyone's talking character concerns and all this. It's like, okay, yeah, dude had an arrest in 2023 for speeding and expired tags and suspended license. All the charges were dropped. It's like, okay, whatever. Coaches glow about him, teammates glow about him. And if there are character concerns, I have enough confidence in the leadership of the locker room to absorb that and kind of steer him in the right direction, because his talent, his size, his speed is unreal. You add him to a rotation where you don't have to ask him to be the guy right out of the gate. You have Yaya Diaby, you have Hassan Reddick now. That's a perfect fit for Todd Bowles. It's a guy that he can stand up on the outside. He can put his hand in the dirt. You can line him up on the other side of Vita Vea and have Pierce, Vea, and Cansey plus Reddick and Yaya Diaby. Like, good luck quarterbacks. So this to me, it wasn't the pick that I was hoping for, but it was one that I was more than happy to make because of his fit with Todd Bowles and the rest of the players in the front of that defense.
Yeah, and I was more than happy to see you take it because waiting at 29 for the Commanders, he was not a player I wanted to take, so I was glad he went off the board. And
I almost
pushed
took him at
players
9
that I might want to take down the board. Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. I think you're best suited. I give James so much crap when he shows up to this show. I don't know why he shows up.
You really do, David.
Just constant.
That's why he doesn't show up. He doesn't want to
got a fight to
play.
Cowboys
I think-
representative of it,
But I think Ross, you're most equipped to do this for us. Best and worst picks, sir, if you don't mind, from picks 11 to 20.
Yeah, I'll do best. I'll do that. Best for me, maybe a little chalky, but I mean, the San Francisco 49ers being able to get Will Campbell at pick 11 is kind of wild. Like, that's kind of insane. And so I just think the value there as like a big time impact immediate player, especially because they really don't have proven tackles at either of those spots. I think that's just a runaway there. I think maybe worst pick out of these, only because I'm not sure about his medicals, is Will Johnson to the Arizona Cardinals. Will Johnson, the Arizona Cardinals, to me, and Will Johnson is a player that, like, you watch him on tape and he is a bona fide first rounder, all pro. It's all there. Got up to 20 miles an hour on an interception return for a touchdown at one point, but not running the 40. I don't know. Is Dion the last cornerback drafted the first round that didn't run a 40 or doesn't have a 40 time or whatever? Like, I don't know when the last corner is that got drafted the first round that didn't run a 40. He was, according to Todd McShay, running in like the 4.5 range when it came to his training. Had a turf toe injury last year that limited his season. Had a hamstring injury before the pre-draft process that limited him all throughout the pre-draft process. I see why he fell as far as he did, but for the Arizona Cardinals, who still need so much and are in probably one of the most positive trajectories that franchise has seen for a while, going with a potentially injury-prone, slow corner might not have been the right decision for Alex Clancy.
Can I push back just a little bit?
Please do.
Because all that you said, I agree with. The only thing I will push back is that I do think it's a good fit. Like, I think Johnson going to a zone-heavy team like Arizona, I think that's where, if you're going to get something that's close to 2023 Johnson, you're going to do it in that kind of system. So I'm not pushing back, but I guess like if he's going to succeed, I think this is probably as good a spot for him to go to as any.
Very similar about what I said to Matt Ryan to the Colts.
Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. That's not. That doesn't.
Well,
I think
it's not the same. It's not the same.
I think that's enough Michigan conversation for Spencer German's audience. So we're going to come back here real quick, and we're going to kick it off with two Wolverines at the top of our next segment, 21 to 32, coming up next on this week's NFL Squad, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's NFL Squad Show is brought to you by our friends over there at LinkedIn Jobs. And as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. And LinkedIn, they make it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. So post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Wrapping up this week's NFL Squad, our Locked On mock draft wrap-up episode here. We've got a whole lot of good people come through to talk about these picks, and we're going to wrap this up with all of the rest of the picks. Pick number 21, Pittsburgh Steelers go to Michigan. Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle. The Los Angeles Chargers stay in Michigan, go tight end Colson Loveland at number 22. The Packers at 23 go Derek Harmon out of Oregon, the D lineman. The Minnesota Vikings go safety Malachi Starks out of Georgia at 24. At 25, the Houston Texans take Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. 26, the Eagles go Mikael Williams, edge rusher out of Georgia. 27, the Baltimore Ravens go Nick Emanwari, safety out of South Carolina. Detroit Lions, 28. Shamar Stewart, edge rusher out of Texas A&M at 29. The Cleveland Browns go tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. And then Joe Marino will be here soon to talk about the Buffaloes taking Trey Amos, cornerback out of Ole Miss. 31, the Kansas City Chiefs take Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. And at 32, the New Orleans Saints, Ross Jackson. What did the New Orleans Saints do at pick number 32?
Traded back up on a steal, by the way, of the draft pick exchange, and took quarterback Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss.
Good pick.
You got to steal.
You throwing darts in New Orleans.
I actually just watched draft day the other day. You fleeced him the way that guy fleeced.
That's right.
Kevin
I moved all the way up to
your
number
picks
one,
and you
so
got all
I
your picks back.
I moved all the way up to number one so that I could argue about whether or not I was going to take a running back or a linebacker.
Yeah, 100%.
I won all my-
Did everyone go to Jackson Dart's birthday party though, Ross?
No.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Spencer German and I also
Time for
executed a
rewind.
trade. Spencer moved up to 29. The Commanders, via me, moved back to 33. There's some other picks involved there. And Spencer, you went Kelvin Banks Jr. What about Kelvin Banks made you want to jump up back into the first round?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think first of all the value was excessively there. At that point, Kelvin Banks Jr. still being on the board. The Browns have a handful of needs, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But in this iteration of how things fell, obviously I took Shedeur Sanders at 2. You get a potential franchise quarterback, or who they think would be a franchise quarterback, and then you give him some protection off the left side with Kelvin Banks Jr., a guy who's been projected to maybe even go top 15 in this draft, just depending on how things sort of fall or what team needs are. So I listen. The Jedrick Wills experience was a failure here. He's still a free agent out there. Browns have clearly indicated they don't want to bring him back. Part of, I think, the reasoning for that too was he was a right tackle that where they tried to move to left tackle.
Right.
Kelvin Banks Jr. is just straight up a left tackle. So keeping him in his, normal spot. And this offensive line's also getting old, man. Like we're only a couple years removed from the Browns having one of the best offensive lines in football. And suddenly, like Joel Bitonio contemplated retirement. He's probably done after this season. Jack Conklin's on the last year of his deal. They have some young guys that maybe could slot in, but they have some injury issues. And so I think anytime you can get a young quarterback and add offensive line talent, sort of the meat and potatoes of any team, I think you can you take a shot at it. And to get him in the first round with the fifth-year option is something that I think was immensely valuable for the Browns as well.
Can I ask you why Kelvin Banks Jr. instead of Josh Simmons? Not accusatory. I'm just curious, like what separates the two.
For me, I think it was just the knee issue. I know he's going to be ready for the season, but I'm sort of viewing it from a standpoint like the Browns have dealt with a ton of injuries up front in recent years, and so getting somebody who kind of has that clean slate. Not to say he can't get hurt as like anybody, but to have somebody come in with that clean slate. I really like Josh Connerly Jr. here too. In some of the mock drafts that I've done, I've traded up to get him, or I've taken him like right at 33 with the Browns and sort of stayed put. I'm also really intrigued. Another Ohio State player, not that I'm biased or anything, but Donovan Jackson. I know because he played so well, especially against the best teams during the Buckeyes run of the national championship. Like because he played so well left tackle, some teams are actually saying he maybe should be a tackle in the NFL. So I'm intrigued by him as well. I think there's a lot of options, but I think the value was there with Banks. Sort of slipping to this point. So
that's good that everybody keeps saying y'all need to invest in infrastructure. So that's a real good pick. And then those NFC East dudes, thank you probably for jumping in front of Philadelphia too, because that's a very Eagles pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because when I think about like the Browns' biggest needs, I actually think outside of quarterback, I think running back is actually the thing that they need the most because right now. Their running back room consists of like Jerome Ford and sort of like a bunch of like role players or guys that you just kind of mix and match. We don't know what the future holds with Nick Chubb. He's still out there. I think the longer he's out there, it probably it's a good indication he ends up coming back to Cleveland. But is he still the same player? I think that's a large question at this point, which is part of the reason why he still is available. And so I'm actually fascinated. Like the last section of picks we talked about with Cody taking Omarion Hampton. There was a mock draft I did where Omarion Hampton fell to 33, and I was like, well, I'm not passing this up. Like, I got to take it here. But I'm kind of interested to see where everyone's curious what that next run on quarterbacks is with like Dart, Milroe, maybe Tyler Shuck. I'm actually kind of fascinated to see when the run on these running backs happens because the second round sort of feels like the sweet spot where a lot of these guys go. And not to say you still can't get value later. I mean, like a DJ Giddens is a guy that's kind of being mocked in like the third round. I love him.
One of my favorites.
Damian Martinez is another guy to Miami that I think was a good fit for some teams. But like some of these guys could go quickly, and then it's like, all right, maybe you have to accelerate where you're taking one. So I don't know that the Browns will take a running back at 33 or in that range, but I do think that's such a massive need for them. Like depending on how things fall, or if Arian Hampton somehow is there, I could see him taking him in the same sort of area of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers, 21st overall pick. Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. What led to that decision?
The Steelers desperately need a defensive tackle that's going to be a stud in the middle of their defensive line and help them stuff the run. You saw how the Ravens just bulldozed them both in their second game against them and in the playoff game against them. And a lot of it was because their interior defensive line help outside of Cam Hayward. Keanu Benton's a good 3-tech, but when you put him as a nose, as they tried, he wasn't able to take on double teams. It allowed guys to get to the linebackers, and then that clogged up the paths, and then they couldn't respond to any of the run plans that the Ravens had. And so they need a guy who can take on double teams and destroy things. And honestly, Kenneth Grant might be the best at that in this draft class. Mm-hmm. He's got an amazing athletic build. He's ready. He looks physical on tape. He's also athletic. You've seen him, run down good, fast position players in space. A lot of people say, oh, he's just a 2-down lineman. I think he could be more than that. I think initially he will be that was his skill set in college, right? But I think that he is a guy that he's shown the ability to win as a pass rusher and take that on. And if the Steelers can add him to the middle of their line, it'll allow Keanu Benton to bump out to where he's normally at as a 3-tech instead of trying to make him more of a 1 or a nose. And then when you have that, then you start to be able to be more of that run, to have that run defense that allows the rest of the defense to settle. Because once the Steelers started giving this up, and I said this back when they beat the Giants, but they were giving up a lot of option runs. And I was like, if they don't figure out a way to solve that, it's going to hurt them. And that's what the Ravens crushed them with. And so the Steelers need to have something in the middle that makes it easier on the guys on the edges, like Alex Highsmith, like TJ Watt, like Nick Herbig, to not get clogged up by the rest of what's going on. If they get that back, if they get that back to like when they had Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt in the middle, they will have that force. They will be a better run stuffing team, which will make them a better pass rushing team, which will make them a better defense, and then a much better team as well. That's why I went Kenneth Grant there. And I went because I went him over Derek Harmon. They love Derek Harmon. Yeah. They love his build. He's built just like Cam Hayward, but I think that they're saying, hey, we need a guy that's going to be that space eater in the middle of our defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Kevin Oestreicher will stay in that division, man. Baltimore Ravens take Nick Eamon-Worry, safety out of South Carolina, one of my favorite prospects on day one.
You basically got 2 Kyle Hamiltons now.
Yeah, ridiculous. I saw Cody was shaking his head. I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, what did I do? But I mean,
David just drafted a second Deebo Samuel, so it's
exactly.
Yeah, right.
Why is it just me? But yeah, when he fell, and actually Louis traded up ahead of me. Philly and the Ravens always trade ahead of each other in the draft. The Eagles did it when they took Jordan Davis, and that allowed Kyle Hamilton to fall to Baltimore. So I guess thank you, Louis, for that. But this time he took Michael Williams, who I was like, all right, I'm between him, Eamon-Worry, and I was also looking at Kelvin Banks too, because what the Ravens have right now, I call it positional freedom. They love taking best player available. They're not going to pigeonhole themselves into one position and say, if everybody we like last year's a prime example of this, where they could have taken an offensive lineman. Once Guyton went off the board to Dallas, it was like, well, there are no other guys with first round grades. They weren't going to reach and take a guy with a day 2 grade in the first round. They just said, hey, Nate Wiggins, he was their top corner on the board. They said, we're just going to take our top corner. And then they got Roger Rosengarten in the second round, and he played really well for them. So for a guy like Nick Eamon-Worry, yes, you already have Kyle Hamilton. Darius Washington is supposed to come back. But, I mean, Nick Eamon-Worry had one of the most, the craziest combine we've ever seen for a player of his size. He's, 6'3", ran a 4.38 40 at 220 pounds. I mean, it's unbelievable what he can do. And everybody's looking essentially for their Kyle Hamilton or Derwin James, Minka Fitzpatrick, like one of those top safeties that can move all around a defense. To give Zach Orr 2 of those guys and Kyle Hamilton, Baltimore had to operate they were in such a bind last season because Marcus Williams fell off the face of the earth after signing that 5-year contract. It was really bad for them. They signed Eddie Jackson in the offseason. That was a terrible signing. It got so toxic with him, they had to cut him. They had to move Kyle Hamilton back to be a deep safety, which he was good at. The Ravens ended up having one of the best defenses in the league the second half of the season, but they didn't do that because they wanted to. They did it because they had to. So having more depth in the secondary, you can't have enough corners. You can't have enough secondary help. having a guy like Eamon Warrior in that defense to allow Kyle Hamilton to move all around your defense. They love using him as a blitzer. And plus the fact that Eamon Warrior can play so many different roles for you as well. I know it's going to be tough for offensive coordinators to try to decide which guy to zone in on because both those guys have such high talent levels.
Can
Those
you
drop
teach
picks
Mark
hurt.
Andrews how to catch passes in the playoffs? That's
Maybe they'll throw.
God.
Warrior has the size. Maybe they'll throw him out there, and he can catch that pass.
sorry,
Hey,
not that Locked On Browns is in your room to talk. I mean, we were
Do you think Mark Andrews would be traded on draft day?
Just curious.
I don't. I mean, Eric DeCosta was very non-committal on his future.
When they traded Hollywood.
That's the thing is Eric DeCosta actually talked about that. That deal was done like a week before the draft, but no one was allowed to know about it or else they would have vetoed it. Like the Ravens would have said no. So we knew about it the day it I actually remember, I think, Ross, I might have been talking to you on the clipping station and you're like,
I'm the one that told you.
I'm like, they took Kyle Hamilton. He's like, all right, I'll see you again at 23. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is their only first round pick. And Ross was like, oh, they just traded for like 23. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? And so
that was our big studio
then
draft show.
An hour later, Marquise Brown showed up at the Cardinals draft party in Arizona. And I'm just like, when did this go on? Like, what are we talking about here? But for Mark Andrews, I don't think he'll be traded. I know that the Ravens are non-committal about it. The reason I don't think he'll be traded is for a couple of reasons. One, Mike Garafolo's reported that both he and Dallas Goedert were available at the start of the league year. Both the Ravens and Eagles didn't get what they wanted for them. And so they essentially just pulled them back. It's like, it's not worth it to trade those guys if they're not going to get the draft compensation that's worth it. The Ravens had a roster bonus on Mark Andrews that was due about a month ago, and that ended up vesting. It ended up going through. So the cap savings, they could end up saving $11 million before that happened. Now it's down to $7 million. So you're thinking if that money's going to be on your books anyway, they probably should have just traded them before that option actually kicked in. And if they're only going to get a 4th-round pick for him or like a day 3 pick, he's probably just going to leave in the offseason and they're going to get a 4th-round comp pick anyway. I mean, I'm not going to trade him for anything less than a day 2 pick. Now, maybe a team doesn't get the tight end they want in the draft. Like maybe, for example, the Chargers, they don't get Colson Loveland like they did in our mock draft here. And they turn around to Baltimore and say, hey, we're really desperate. We'll give you what you want from Mark Andrews. Then I could see it happening. But it'd have to be a deal that they can't refuse to move him, I think.
Yeah. David Harrison, you found a way to, obviously you traded back. You added Luther Burden, wide receiver, giving Jaden Daniels another weapon. What was your thought process on that one?
Yeah, so Landon kind of already alluded to it, right? But speed, I mean, he's not exactly Deebo Samuel. He does a little bit more than I wouldn't say just what Deebo Samuel does, but he's a little bit versatile. Obviously, a young guy. Also, Deebo is on an expiring contract, so you need to make sure you have that shored up there as well. So certainly the offseason of giving Jaden more help to potentially make a run at being an MVP. I mean, there's been a couple of quarterbacks that we know of recently to win MVPs in their second NFL seasons. Would love to see Jaden try to make a run at that. I'm not saying I predict it, but Luther Burden Jr. could certainly help there. Another team that didn't make a pick in the first round that got one, has one later in the second round. The Los Angeles Rams in our mock eventually end up with Josh Connerly Jr., the offensive tackle out of Oregon. So to wrap things up, guys, let's get some superlatives here. Tony Wiggins, where's the biggest impact coming from in the first round of this draft?
I actually, even though your pick technically wasn't a first round pick, I like Washington's pick, and the reason why is because I think he's a better player than people are giving him credit for. And the other thing is, I think about receivers that are ball in the hand guys. So they got Debo, right? Mm-hmm. And now you add him to the fray. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about scary Terry McLaurin, and then I'm thinking about the damn quarterback who is also a ball in the hand guy. They just really become a team that if you can't tackle well, 3 plays could kill you. You could play well all game, and they can get 21 just off you missing tackles. That's a lot.
And you guys don't know it here, but I actually traded back up into the second round, like earlier in the second round. I also got Travion Henderson out of
you see? I vetoed it. Sorry. No, you
that's what happened. James Yarko, Locked On Bucks. I do want to ask you this. You come from a defensive coach team. The Buccaneers are a defensive team. So let me ask you this. Defensive Rookie of the Year. Knee-jerk reaction. Haven't seen him on the field yet. Looking on this list, who do you think is your favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year? And then, unlike James, I'm going to give Landon McCool a little bit of a heads up. You're getting Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I'll take the low-hanging fruit. It's Abdul Carter. Like, he is hands down the best prospect in this draft, and it's not close. If the Titans were smart, they would just take Abdul Carter, like, period. They would just draft him, deal with quarterback later on when there's an actual better quarterback class. Abdul Carter is going to be a problem in the NFL. So Landon, you have fun with that, because he's going to end up with the Giants, and he's probably going to be the reason that Dak misses 10 games again in 2025.
Can I real quick? Listen. The Browns. I think the Browns have a chance to take Abdul Carter potentially, and I am like just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like this screams to me that like he shows up to rookie minicamp, and then we get a report that he has to have surgery on the foot. I know that everything's being reported like, oh, everything's going well, but again, agent speak, you never fully know. This screams though, like we're gonna get this report that he needs surgery. Like as soon as rookie minicamp breaks, it's gonna be like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like they drafted this guy and then he's gonna miss, like he might not miss the season, but still, that foot injury though. I mean, the only other examples that come to mind are like Julio had it and he had the surgery done. And then he had a good rookie year, but then his second year he had the surgery again, so it can haunt you for your career.
Oh, it always does.
Sammy Watkins had a similar thing, and he was never the same player. Like it's always like these. I don't know. It's one of those bugaboos for me where I'm just like I worry about it a little bit. But I mean, you're right. He is a fantastic player, so you can't not take him. But I worry about the other shoe dropping.
Yeah, Lenny McCool, offensive rookie of the year candidate right off the bat. Who do you got?
I think it's got to be Genty, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, I just think going to a team that has a guy that calling the plays that really, really, really wants to run the ball, and Chip Kelly, and I think him being just that sort of one of the rare blue chips in this draft. I think he goes there and he probably tears it up quite a bit. And it really kind of helped things with Geno Smith in that offense and really kind of run the ball a lot.
Cody disagrees.
Will a bottom of the division team have someone win offensive rookie of the year? Like, come on. I don't know.
Bottom of the division team.
What
about Tyler Warren?
To be fair,
he's the only playmaker, Ross. He's the only playmaker.
How is Tyler Warren going to possibly amass enough stats to be?
Aaron Rodgers
I was going to go.
doesn't he?
I was going to go with the other tight end.
I
was going to go with the other tight end. You look at Colston Loveland. You put him in a Jim Harbaugh offense.
Yes,
with Justin
they need a tight end.
That's true.
I could see him.
Are they
going to
throw the ball enough? Are they going to throw a ball enough for him?
They should
get them to the red zone.
They did
put Roman over there. So
it's a quarterback, running back, wide receiver award. So
all right.
Well, that's the only
that is going to wrap up this. That's going to wrap up this NFL Squad episode. Wrap up our reactions to this year's Locked On Mock Draft Special. As expected, the Washington Commanders, big winner of this year's mock draft. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. Make sure you're coming back each and every show here, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're covering all your favorite teams every single day. Don't miss a moment of that coverage. Again, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.